Hello, all of you wayward spirits. My name is Liz Ashley, and I am so obsessed with supernatural that I decided to do some research Winchester style on anything and everything mentioned in the show. And though the show has sadly ended, this podcast is going to keep the family together. So, what do you say? Do you want to join me on the hunt? This podcast has a lot of reference to death and disturbing situations, so listener discretion is advised. Hello and welcome to episode 26 of Wayward Spirit Pod, where we are researching black-eyed children. Yes. So this is another one of those topics that I'm kind of relating to supernatural because I just really want to talk about it. Seriously, there are some crazy stories about black-eyed children, and I have listened to so many podcasts about them, so I just had to put it on this podcast. So today we are specifically going to talk about the episode All Hell Breaks Loose Part 1, which is in season 2 and it's episode 21. It is written by Sierra Gamble and directed by Robert Singer. So this is also a really good episode. Super, super sad, but really good. But yeah, I'm just really excited to talk about this episode and talk about the lore. The lore is going to be the best. All right, let's go. Okay, so this episode starts out with Sam and Dean going into a cafe, and Sam has to get Dean a burger with extra onions. And Sam is like so mad because he's like, I'm gonna be the one in the car with those extra onions that you're getting. Thank you very much. And Dean just gets this like little like smirk / smile on his face, and it is like the cutest thing ever. And then of course he tells him to get him some pie. He's like, I love me some pie. I love Dean. He's amazing. All right. But when Sam goes inside the cafe, he gets kidnapped. And Dean is like so sad when he sees that Sam is gone. But he goes to Bobby to help find him. I love Bobby. I am so glad he's in this episode. So Sam ends up waking up in this ghost town, which honestly is so creepy. And it's like, it's a real ghost town, but it looks like it's kind of from purgatory, like honestly, but it's not. Like they mentioned that it's in like, I think they said it was in South Dakota. So if it's real, I really want to go there. All right. Because I heard, okay, side note, I saw something on the internet the other day where it was like, would you let the government pay you to like live in this ghost town? I think it was on TikTok. And apparently there's this like ghost town, and I think it was in South Dakota, and they like pay people to live there. Don't know why, don't know if it's real, but I literally thought about it. I was like, huh. Maybe, but you can't have the internet. And it was like for like 6 months or something. And I was like, oh, okay, never mind. I would not survive that. All right. I got to do this podcast. All right. Anyway. So Sam was alone at first. Sammy. But he soon finds all the other babies just like him. And one of them being Ava, who I can't stand. And if you've seen this episode, you know why. But I can't stand her. But the first person he finds is Andy, the kid who like can make people do whatever he wants. He made Dean like give him baby and everything. It was crazy. But then they find Ava like freaking out. She's like locked in some like abandoned house. She's like freaking out. Sam gets her out. And then they find 2 other people, Jake and Lily, who Sam has never met before. They've never met before. So Sam knows only 2 of the people there, but they all have like abilities, like Umbrella Academy. That's all I could think about when I was watching this. I'm like, this is like X-Men Umbrella Academy kind of stuff, you know, like they have all these powers and there's some like person trying to get them to use their powers. Yeah. So Sam ends up telling them that it's probably a demon that brought them there. And they don't seem to like that idea very much. They're like, a demon? Seriously? And Sam basically tells them that there's soldiers in a demon army and to like get the apocalypse. And they're like, oh my god, they're like, what? Like they think he's crazy. And like, of course, Andy and Ava are like freaking out, but they believe him because they know him. But like Jake and Lily are like, nah, like jumping ship, you know? So Jake actually goes off on his own to roam around the ghost town, and he finds this little girl writing on a chalkboard. And do you know what she was writing? She was writing, "I will not kill." Yep. And then she rushes in front of him with like talon hands and black eyes. Yes, kind of like our subject today. Literally, I was not planning this. Like I was just gonna relate like the fact that all these kids were given demon blood as a child, and so they were like demon kids to black-eyed children. But this was perfect. This is perfect. I was like, oh my gosh, it's really like a little girl with black eyes. Oh, it was crazy. It was literally serendipity. I love that word. Anyway, here we go. So Sam gets Iron to save him, and Sam is like, so that was a demon. And he was like, so yeah, I'm right, like thank you, you thought I was crazy, but I'm not. So Sam actually explains that he thinks it's probably was a hierarchy. Man, I don't know how they said it. Hierarchy, or it's spelled Achiri. I looked it up, but yeah, I don't know how to say it. So basically, what that is a demon disguising themselves as a little girl. All right. So Bobby has no word on Sam, like cannot help Dean, does not know where he is. So Dean calls Ash at the Roadhouse, and apparently he has something. But he's like, man, this is really big. Like, I can't talk about this on the phone. Like, you just need to come here. You need to come to the Roadhouse. So they go to the Roadhouse, and it's burnt down. I totally forgot about this part. I don't know why. I like forgot that was in this episode. Oh man. And Ash died in the fire. I was like, oh my gosh, like I was not prepared for this episode. I really wasn't. I was like, oh, season 2. Oh yeah, the ghost town. Like I know what happens to Sam, but I was just like, man, this episode is really sad. Like I forgot about this part. So now in the ghost town, of course, another person goes out on their own, because that's just, I hate when they do that in horror movies. It's like, oh, I'll just go by myself. It's like, no, what? Why? Why? Is that ever a good idea? No, it never is. It really never is. But so Lily goes out on her own, and I think because like Jake and Lily have never met Sam before and have never like had to deal with Sam and Dean, that they're not taking this as serious as it is. Like I think she was trying to leave, but I don't think that they understand like what's going on enough. Ava and Andy have kind of been through this stuff with them before, and like Jake and Lily haven't. So I think that they're just like roaming around by themselves, trying to do it by themselves. And it's like, no, that's not how this works, okay? And then, of course, the next time we see Lily, trigger warning, she is hung. She's like hanging in a I think it's a windmill. I wasn't really sure. Like I'm pretty sure it was a windmill, but I'm not positive. But then Ava starts like breaking down, like ugh, I do not like this girl. But anyway, she starts like breaking down, like, oh my god, freaking out, right? Okay. So And then, oh, it's so sweet. It is so sweet. Sam keeps talking about how he wishes like Dean were there and he wishes that Dean was with him because he would know what to do. And it's like the sweetest thing ever. And oh my gosh, I really love them. I do. But so Andy's like, okay, well, like maybe if you give me something of his, like I can get him to like manifest a vision, because he can get people to do what he wants and he can get people to see what he wants. So he took a receipt from Sam and the signature said Dean Hasselhoff. It was great. It was great. But Sam gave him the receipt and Andy was able to send Dean a vision, but it was scary because Dean was like doubling over and it looked like it was like really hurting him and he was like in pain, and Bobby at first like didn't know what to do. But in the vision, it was enough for Bobby to know where it was. So they were on the road to go get Sam. Oh my gosh. And as the group of psychic kids get everything salted and ready for a demon attack, Sam ends up telling Ava that her fiance died when the demon came to kidnap her. And, she puts on a really good show and is like so upset and whatever. I don't know. I just don't like her. I hate her. Not more than Amelia. Not more than Amelia, but close. Very, very close. I'm just saying, like, you all know if you've listened to this podcast, I do not like Amelia. She's my least favorite character of all ever. Yes. All right. But all of a sudden, Sam sees Azazel, yellow eyes, and he realizes he's dreaming because nobody else can see him. But Azazel tells him that this is actually a competition. So he's like, this is the competition. And he's like, you're the one I'm rooting for, Sam. And Sam was just like, what are you talking about? And every time I see this now, and like every time, okay, so I'm like getting really into Hell's Kitchen. I really am. It's like a thing. I'm like really into it, okay? And every time I watch it and I watch this episode, I think of that. I'm like, oh my gosh, doing like a competition because it's like cutthroat and everything. But this competition is actually from hell. Isn't that funny? I thought it was funny. But this is why Azazel actually killed their mom. Well, kind of. So she made that deal and she wasn't supposed to come in the room. He told her not to come in the room, but she did. And he killed her mom and fed him demon blood. And that's how he actually ended up getting his powers. So this is the whole scene where like Sam figures out that like basically everything in his life has been planned by this demon. I don't know why I keep saying demon. I keep saying demon. I do that all the time. Anyway, his whole life is being planned by this demon, and he's like freaking out. He's like, what are you talking about? But when Sam finally wakes up, Ava is missing. Of course she's missing. But she's actually watching them as Sam and Jake go and try to find her. She goes in and now she's alone with Andy, and she gets that little demon child, the little black-eyed children. Hey, the little black-eyed child, and gets her to come in and kill Andy. Yes. This is like literally Ava. Ooh, I don't like her. This is why I hate her, because she has been playing them the whole entire time. The whole entire time she has been playing them. It's ridiculous. All right. So it really is. So Sam comes in, and because she starts to scream, she's like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And so Sam and Jake come in, and Sam notices, like, she's like freaking out, right? She's like, oh my God, I don't know how it happened, blah, blah, blah. And so Sam's like, well, where were you? And she's like, I was like, I don't really remember what she said. I think she was like, I was trying to find something or do, I don't know, whatever she said. It was a lame excuse, whatever it was. And then Sam realized that the salt lining, she like messed up the salt lining so the demon could come in. And Sam's like, no one else could have done that, and Andy wouldn't have done that. And then she stops crying, calms down, and is like, she's like, I had you going there for a while. Yes, that is what she said. She said, I had you going there for a while, didn't I? Oh my gosh. She's so annoying. She's so annoying. I'm like, no, you're ridiculous. I don't like her. And then she starts bragging about how she's the heavyweight champ and that she's killed every single person that Azazel has put into this ghost town. She's killed every single person. She's like, it's you or me. I'm just like, oh my gosh, girl. Sam is like disgusted with Ava right now. He's like, how could you even do this? And yes, how could she even do this? She's ridiculous. Sitting there being sad about stuff that she did. Ugh, she's annoying. But she tries to kill Sam. She literally tries to kill Sam and is like beginning to summon this like little black-eyed child again. And Jake ends up snapping her neck. So, and then there were two. Has anyone else read the book And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie? Well, if you have, great book, seriously. Every time it's like on a train and like people like die one by one and they're trying to figure out who the killer is, and people just like die or are just like dying one by one. And this reminds me of that, because it's like, and then people were just dying one by one. Like, I get it was a competition, but yes, okay. Anyway, so now is the part that I absolutely hate with all my being and everything inside of me. I hate this part so freaking much. I hate this part. All right. So Sam says that they have to go. And Jake says, no, not we. So Jake said he had a vision, and that yellow eyes came to him and told him that it was either him or Sam. He told him that it was either him or Sam. So of course they start fighting, and oh my gosh, like Sam wins, right? Like Sam wins the fight. He literally has a chance to kill him. Like completely. This guy is on the ground. He is like about to like stab him, and then doesn't, because he is so sweet and so just wholesome and amazing, and I love Sam. But it was such bad decision. It was a bad decision, because Dean and Bobby come to save him, and literally right as he like turns his back to walk towards Dean, Jake gets up and like plunges a knife into his back. And oh my gosh, poor freaking Dean, man. Saw the whole thing, literally from start to finish. And he tried to warn him. He tried to be like, hey, Sam, like, look out. And it was just, it was horrible. It was horrible. It was terrible. It was bad. Like, Dean was crying. I was crying. He's like, oh, he like broke down. And he said, oh, it's not that bad. It's not that bad. Oh my gosh. Like, I'm gonna cry now. Cause he literally like could not admit that he was dying. He was like, it's not that bad. It's not that bad. Oh, wow. Okay. That reminds me a lot of another episode. Okay, I'm not going to talk about it. All right, okay. Anyway, so yeah. Horrible ending to this episode. It sucks. It's really sad. And Sam should have killed Jake. All right. Just a little side note. So I watched The Kingsman the other day with a friend, and literally, like every single character that I liked in like both of the movies, I saw the first one and I saw the second one. Literally, almost every single character that I liked in those movies died or went away in some sort of fashion, and it was just really freaking annoying. And I even said to my friend, I'm like, this is like watching Supernatural all over again. Like everybody I like keeps dying. Like, what's the point? I'm just kidding. I love Supernatural, but all my favorite people do end up dying on that too. So yes. All right. So again, we are going to talk about black-eyed children, but there's not, they don't really talk about black-eyed children in Supernatural. That is not any lore that they talk about. There was some type of paranormal, I think it was Avicii? I have no idea. They did talk about an Ichiri, which is a demon disguising themselves as a little girl, and it did have black eyes and some like talons. So it was very, very similar to what we were going to talk about. So yeah, but that's the only lore that we get about this in Supernatural. And you know, that they're like, they were fed demon blood as a child and are kind of like a little demon kid army thing. Okay. All right. So let's talk about the lore on black-eyed children. I'm so excited to talk about this. Seriously, this is one of my favorite things ever. They really creep me out. And the first time I ever heard a story about them, I was thoroughly creeped out for the whole like week, honestly. So just forewarning you. Okay. So just warning you. So black-eyed children actually originated in Texas, which is ironic, right? You know, because Jared and Jensen. All right. So they're specifically from Abilene, Texas, though, and they are thought to be supernatural beings that look around the ages of like 6 to 16. The age range can vary for these kids, and they tend to only appear at night, and they always target adults pretty much either like in a parking lot or on like a dark road at night, or most are like at your doorstep and knocking on your door. That is where most people see them, which is why this is so terrifying to me. So these kids often come in pairs, and they always ask for a favor. So there's always two of them or more, but most times it's two of them. And they're always asking for something. Normally, they ask if they can either make a call to get a ride home, to come in and get something to eat, like they're hungry, or they need to use the bathroom. And almost every encounter has left the people that have like seen them or have interacted with them, they have all experienced like fear and uneasiness, like just like unexplainable. These people are like terrified and nervous because these kids like freak them out and they don't know why. And some people even get like sick. Some people, after encountering, like having an encounter with them, they get sick. So these children at first are not threatening and they seem like normal kids, but they end up being very persistent and want to get in your house or car. So if you try to tell them no, or if you try to make an excuse or something like that, they will be very persistent because they want to get what they want. But most notice something is not right about these children eventually. And when they notice, they notice it because their eyes are pure black. No pupil, no nothing, no anything, just black. So Brian Bethel was actually one of the first people to document a black-eyed children encounter. And here is his story. And this is the first story of one. And this is in Abilene, Texas. And it was on January 16th, 1998. All right. So Brian left his apartment in Abilene and he stopped at a movie theater, and suddenly he heard a knock on the window of his car and he saw two young boys. He said that he thought they were between about 10 and 14 years old, and almost immediately he knew something was wrong and felt a sense of fear. The first boy began to tell Bethel that they need his help. They wanted to see the new Mortal Kombat movie but forgot their money. And instead of asking for the money itself, the boy asks for a lift to their house to go get it. He is hesitant and a little nervous, but the first boy was extremely persistent. Then the little boy said, "We can't get in your car until, just let us in. And we'll be gone before you know it. We'll go to our mother's house." Which, side note, might I add, sounds eerily similar to the Vamps in TVD, the Vampire Diaries. Just saying. All right. Brian Bethel started unlocking the door without even realizing it. It was like the child was telling him to do so telepathically. But when he looks up again, he realizes that the kid's eyes were solid black. No pupil, nothing. Just pure pitch black. And in most stories, when people meet black-eyed kids and notice that they have black eyes, it gets even creepier and actually dangerous. The second boy continued to stand there completely silent, while the first boy threatened him, saying, "We won't hurt you. You have to let us in. We don't have a gun." But he started pulling at the door and demanded to be let in. But Bethel managed to gain composure and speed home. And still, no one actually knows the origins of black-eyed children. Some think that they're ghosts, some think that they are demons, which in supernatural would make sense. In the supernatural universe, that would make sense because they have black eyes. And like we saw in Supernatural episode today, there was a little girl with black eyes and she was a demon pretending to be a little girl. So that would make so much sense. Some even think that they are vampires, which again, in the TVD universe, that would make sense. In the Vampire Diaries universe, that makes sense because they have to be invited in. They can't just come in. Like they always ask to come in. But an interesting theory on their origins is from a book called Your Haunted Lives, The Black-Eyed Kids. According to this book, the kids may be called Okatan. I think Otkon, it's Otkon, and it's from the ancient, I'm gonna butcher this, Iconese Indian tribe legends. So essentially, they believed that there was this dark power called Otkon, and that it could take over children, and the evil one, which is the Otkon, would mate with human females to produce black-eyed, chalky-skinned children. These children were killed by the tribe soon after birth and burned to stop them from resurrecting. Children wandering alone in the woods could also be taken over by the Otkon and would reemerge with black eyes and pale skin, acting nervously while repeating themselves over and over. Their goal was to destroy the tribe and infect all of the people with Otkon. So this sounds so similar to the Arichi, um like they talked about earlier in Supernatural, because basically I like I said, I don't know how to say it, but I did look it up. And basically the lore on that, or the different definition of that, is the ghost or a spirit of a little girl who is either murdered or abused and left to die. The Arichi is from the mythology of India, but some sources mistakenly attribute them to Native American folklore. So basically, she comes down from the mountains and hilltops at night to bring sickness to humans, particularly children. So that sounds a lot like what that book thinks the origin of them are, the Your Haunted Lives of Black Eyed Kids. That origin sounds really similar to this, to what they talked about in Supernatural, the demon that they were talking about in Supernatural. So I just thought that that was a fun little connection that I was not planning on. And so I just thought that was really cool. And I wanted to connect the dots. Really cool. All right. So before we talk about the real life stories, which I am so excited about, let me tell you, we are going to talk about the facts of Black Eyed Kids. So I'm just going to give you some facts on them. So black eyed kids, they look normal at first, like we said, but they have like pale skin with completely black eyes, no nothing, no pupil, no nothing, just completely black. And they are typically between the ages of 6 and 16, and people who get close to them always feel uneasy and feel a lot of fear, and then they just frighten people with their presence, like they're just generally frightened by their presence. Some people have also reported seeing black-eyed kids that have talons. This is really rare, but kind of like Supernatural. All right. Again, was not planning for these, like, for these similarities, but it makes me so happy. All right. So black eyed kids are commonly described as wearing dated clothing. So a lot of people, when they see them, they describe them as looking from like a different era, which also could attribute to the creepiness and the uneasiness of the situation. I listened to a podcast actually a while ago about a report, and I don't think I have the story on here, but basically they this guy let these kids in, and they had to kick them out, and they kicked him out. But he did get like really sick, and he started, like, his nose started bleeding, like he started throwing up, like it was like a bad thing. And they had cats, and the cats were like freaking out, but crazy. But in most stories, people get this really eerie, creepy feeling and end up fleeing from them because their gut just tells them to. So that's good. Always listen to your gut. Seriously, always listen to your gut. So apparently this has like gotten into like creepy pasta and like the fake side of stories and stuff, but Bethel insists that his story is true and that it really happened, and that it all really happened. And actually in 2014, a British paper reported sightings of black-eyed kids around the world. And so, I mean, look, you know me, I always want to believe in things. So let's talk about some real life encounters. And again, these are some stories that I found while researching and on Reddit and stuff like that. So just a little disclaimer, like they could be not true. Like I'm not like sure, but I'd like to think that they are true because you know me. I like to think, like I said, I like to think that things are real because I just do. I don't know, I just think it's fun. But so again, it's up to you whether you think these are real or not. I think they could be. All right. So this person on Reddit says, this person says that they never heard of black-eyed children before, or black-eyed kids before this encounter. And that she's not a writer, she's actually an engineer, and she's living in North Texas. And she actually doesn't believe in ghosts, demons, aliens, or whatever. Okay, so this person basically does not believe in supernatural things, does not believe in the paranormal. They're an engineer, and but they had this event happen to them on Halloween that they can't explain, and they really just don't even know, and they've never posted on Reddit before. And she never really knew about black-eyed children until her encounter on Halloween. So okay, so we're gonna get into her story. So it was Halloween, and it was a slow trick-or-treating night in their neighborhood. It was about 9:30 p.m., and her husband and her were sitting on the floor in the family room, and they were watching ghost shows. And she said she doesn't believe in them, but she always likes a good ghost story now and then, and that it was Halloween and all. But they hadn't had any activity at the door in over half an hour, and it was getting late, so they decided to turn the porch light off. And they let their dog Chloe out of the crate. So at 10 p.m., her husband decided to take a shower and get ready for bed. And her teenage son went to a local haunted house and wasn't going to be back for another hour or so. So she and her dog Chloe were alone on the couch, when all of a sudden, she hears this knock on the door. Knock, knock, knock. And her initial reaction was, seriously? It's almost 10 o'clock. Like, go home. But then this uneasy feeling came over her. Why knock? They have a doorbell that glows in the dark. So she paused, and she didn't really want to ignore it because she had this big glass panel and anybody at the front door could see right in. And then she heard it again. Knock, knock, knock. She glanced down at Chloe and she was gone. And normally her dog, like most dogs, would go running towards the door, but she wasn't there. And when she found her, she was crouching by the back door like she was wanting to get out. She yelled up to her husband, but he was already in the shower and really couldn't hear her. And then she heard it again. Knock, knock, knock. And at the third time of the knock, a car drove down the street and she saw the silhouette of children. And she instantly felt relief. It was just some kids, probably a couple of neighbors on their way back home, and wanted to stop by and show her their costumes or something. She went to the door and looked back to make sure Chloe wasn't following her, which she was not. And when she turned the porch light on, she could see through the glass that it was a couple of pretty small kids. And it was a little late for such young ones. And she began to wonder what parents would leave these young kids out alone on Halloween night. But then she realized that the kids weren't wearing costumes. They were in normal street clothes. And when she opened the door, they didn't say the customary trick or treat. And she began to feel very uneasy again. It was a girl and a boy, about 11 or 12. The girl very politely spoke up and said, "Ma'am, can we please come inside and use your phone to call our mom?" And when she spoke, she felt something in the pit of her stomach telling her something was wrong. She knew something was wrong. She said, "What kid that age doesn't have a cell phone? Every kid has a cell phone these days." And so she asked, "Don't you have a phone of your own to call your mom on?" And that's when things got even creepier. Both kids turned to look at one another as if they were going to say something to one another, but they didn't speak. They both turned back to her and said, "Ma'am, my cell phone battery doesn't have a charge left in it. Can we please come inside and call our mother? We're alone out here and my brother is scared." She said she had two competing feelings. The first, as a mom, she wanted to let these kids inside and help them. But the other, her gut was telling her to keep them at bay and to just leave them alone. She literally felt a lot of fear. And then she noticed that she was unintentionally opening up the door a few inches, and she was completely unaware of doing it. So she stopped and she said, "Honey, why don't you give me your mother's number and I can call her myself?" But there was another pause, and they looked at each other again. And after a second, they turned to her again and said, "Ma'am, My little brother has to use your bathroom. Can we please come inside while you call our mom?" And with that, the little girl moved a little bit closer toward the door. But as she did that, the girl stepped in front of her, and as she stood in front of her, she saw it for the first time. Solid black eyes. And she said she never felt such terror in her life, that she felt every single hair on the back of her arms and her neck standing up. So she closed the door just so her face was able to stick out. But the little girl stopped again and pleaded with her, "Ma'am, please. We're really scared and alone out here. We have to come inside. Please help us." And then both of the kids began to cry. And that's when she said that fear just took over her. And she said, "I'll call your mom if you give me the number." And she shut and locked the door, and that was it. I mean, I've heard this story before, and I just think it's crazy because that's just, I don't know why, but that just freaks me out, man. Like, that freaks me out because it's like, what would you do? Like, they seem so innocent, and it's like, okay, but would you listen to your gut, or would you try to be the like nice person? I don't know. I would probably listen to my gut because I would be scared that they were black-eyed children. All right. So this person said that a month ago, their friend was talking to them about these creepy kids that were hanging around his house. And he seemed like incredibly scared, but this person didn't scare easily. So he said that they always wanted to use his phone and always wanted to come in, but he always said no. He always told them no. But a week ago, he told him that he was going to let them in, and this person really didn't give it any attention at first. It was like, okay, fine, you're gonna let these little kids in. But he's been missing ever since. And this person's gone over to their house, but it's empty, and his cell phone number isn't going through. And this person is really freaked out. So when I saw this story, I was debating. I was like, should I put it on the podcast? Should I not? Like, it's short, but it is really freaking creepy. And who knows if it's true, but let me tell you, it's creepy. Creepy AF. Creepy AF. All right. All right. So this is our last story. But this story is about a Marine. And as this Marine was based in North Carolina, he had a strange encounter with a black-eyed child. So this Marine states that he was alone one evening and he was watching a movie when a knock came at his door. Expecting it to be his roommate and that he had like forgotten his key or something, he opened it without hesitation. But when he did, it was not his roommate. It was two small children standing outside. And as soon as he saw them, he was filled with dread. As soon as he saw these two little kids, he was filled with dread and had an impulse to slam the door shut as fast as he could. And that is when he realized that both of the children standing in front of him had jet black eyes. But despite his fear and uneasiness, the Marine asked these children what they wanted. And so the children just stared at him and said that it was cold outside and that they wanted to come inside and read. And the Marine realized that there was like no one else inside and that these children were just here alone. Like there were no parents, there was no nothing. And so they took a step towards his door, and he just gave into that impulse to shut the door. And so he shut it quickly, but the knocking continued for several minutes, in addition to the rattling on his window. And before the noises stopped, and the children appeared to be gone. And this Marine made many, many inquiries the following morning, but few people had actually been on site on base during this encounter. And they said that they hadn't heard or seen anything that strange. I think that is crazy. I think all these stories are crazy. They scare the living crap out of me. Even talking about it right now is scaring the living crap out of me. Not gonna lie. I don't know why this scares me so much. It like intrigues me so much, and like I guess I like it so much because it terrifies me. Like this is one of the things that just like if this it just terrifies me. It terrifies me. I'm terrified by this. All right, okay. But that is the real life lore, real life stories, and I love them so much. And so we're not going to do similarities or differences today because I mean, you know, I'm just going to tell you how I related this to supernatural. And like I said, a lot of serendipity happened this episode, which I'm so very happy for. So basically the Achiri is the ghost of a spirit or a little girl who is either murdered or abused and left to die, which is what we see in supernatural, which is really similar to the black-eyed children because I mean they're practically little demon kids, right? I don't know. But that's how I was relating into supernatural because, these other kids, these psychics, were getting demon blood and they're being fed demon blood to become psychics and to fight the demon army. So, yeah. But this little girl in this episode that we talked about actually did have black eyes and did have talons, which is some of the lore, which is really cool because I forgot that was in this episode. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed all those stories and the lore and the episode and everything. This was so much fun. These stories are so creepy. All right. Well, thank you so much to all of my fellow Wayward Spirits for joining me on this journey today. And if you want to go on more hunts with me, make sure to subscribe to Wayward Spirit Pod wherever you listen to podcasts or on YouTube if that is where you're watching this. And don't forget to turn on post notifications. So that way, next week, you can join me for a very special episode where I talk to the owner of a very beautiful replica of Baby. Yes, it's going to be so exciting. All right. And if you're already wanting more Wayward Spirit, there's some extra content on Patreon, some bloopers, behind the scenes. There is the visual episodes to season 1 of 2 of Wayward Spirit Pod. So go check us out on Patreon at Wayward Spirit. And I would love to put together some listener stories. So if you have any responses to the episodes, or if you have a supernatural story of your own with the cast, or literally like a ghost story, I would love to hear it. Please send me all of your stuff. I really want to hear some listener stories. So if you want to send me an audio file, a video file, a text file, whatever you are comfortable with, to waywardspiritpod@gmail.com, that would be amazing. And if you want even more Wayward Spirit Pod, check us out on Instagram at Wayward Spirit Pod. Check out the YouTube on Instagram at Wayward Spirit TV. Check out our merch at waywardspiritpod.com. What else? Check us out on TikTok at Wayward Spirit Pod, I think. And of course, our YouTube channel, if you are on that right now. Wayward Spirit TV. All right. These endings aren't getting any better. I'm butchering them every week. All right. Well, stay spooky, and I will see all of you Wayward Spirits next week. Woo-hoo! Bye.